Hi, I'm Tony Kramer with RDO Equipment Company. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Agriculture Technology Podcast.
Every day, there are phenomenal advancements being made in the field of agriculture technology. RDO Equipment Company is a leader in agriculture equipment and precision agriculture technology and is here with industry experts bringing the latest news and information from RDO and John Deere.
Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. This is episode number 129, and we are back with another episode of Jake and Tony Talk. And today we are going to be talking about TruSet. Before we dive into the show, please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast if you haven't already. You can subscribe to the show on the many podcasting apps that we're streaming this on, such as Apple's podcast app. We have it on Stitcher, Overcast, SoundCloud, as well as many others. While you're out there, drop us a review. We'd love to hear what you think about the show. Lastly, make sure to follow RDO Equipment Company on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and catch all of our latest videos on YouTube. You can follow me on Twitter at RDO Tony K, and you can follow Jake on Twitter
at RDO Jacob M.
With that, let's dive into the show, Jake. Like I said, we are going to be talking about TruSet. Now, we have talked about TruSet before. I had Sam Paulson on. He is the John Deere tillage specialist. He talked a little bit about TruSet. Oh gosh, that was actually a couple years ago already when the 2660 VT first came out. So that's back in 2018, episode 81, when we last talked about that. So I wanted to, being kind of in the heart of tillage season right now, some guys may even be wrapping up with tillage right now, but up here, Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota in the Valley, we are kind of heavy in tillage season right now. Nothing against you no-tillers, minimum tillers, cover croppers, but this episode is specifically talking tillage and TruSet.
Yeah, but don't skip it, because you may learn something.
That's true. That is TruSet. See what I did there?
That was good. All
right, Jake. TruSet. So in the past, John Deere had a product called AccuDepth. Mm-hmm. There are still some AccuDepth machines or AccuDepth tools out there. I still see them from time to time. Some people absolutely loved that product. Some people did not care for that product. Now, TruSet is not AccuDepth. TruSet is a whole new animal. What I like to say is that TruSet is AccuDepth on steroids. Now, TruSet has a lot of different features, a lot of different functionalities that we're going to talk about. It has some different compatibilities when it comes to tractors and machines. But the first thing I want to talk about, Jake, from the agronomic standpoint is so I should take a step back. Okay. What is TruSet? TruSet is an automated system that controls tillage. So you have in-cab control of your tillage tool, whether that be depth, that be finishing attachment, down pressure, side-to-side leveling. And this feature, this TruSet, can be added or can be factory installed across many John Deere tillage tools, from your primary pass in the fall with the 2730 Ripper, 2660 VT. I'm sure there's a couple other ones, 2430 chisel plow. But it also carries through to the secondary tillage line of 2230s. I know I don't know the number because we don't see them that often, but the mulch finisher, that one you can get on the mulch finisher. So it does truly span. And now I think about it, you can also get it on new air seeders with the Pro Series row units. You can get TruSet for down pressure control. You can get TruSet on the 2510H high-speed applicator. So there's a lot of different things that TruSet can be used for. So the fact that it's automated, you can make in-cab adjustments, things like that. There's also another aspect of it that helps or can help a farm when it comes to data. Or agronomic perspectives. Yep. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how TruSet can help us from an agronomic /data perspective?
Well, okay, so let's start from here and say, if you didn't listen to the last episode where we literally rambled on for half an hour, we found half an hour that we could talk about rate controllers. Literally, you could take almost all those almost every single one of those features and benefits, conveniences, automations that we talked about in rate controllers, and you're going to put it on a tillage tool. So what are the cool things that we think about when it comes to rate controllers? The ability to document, the ability to maintain consistent flow rates. Well, in this case, we don't have flow rates. We have depth. Okay, so we have consistent depth, the ability to manipulate, control the output with the press of a button instead of now getting, instead of having to control that dial where we would increase or decrease the pressure on our sprayer or on our fertilizer system. Now we don't have to go back out there with the wrench and set the gang angles, set the shank depth, all that kind of stuff. We don't have to do any of that. We literally set we kind of give it a rough idea of where it wants to be on our general startup, and from there on you can run virtually everything else in the cab. So we can automate those processes and we can document those processes. And just like with rate controllers that we can do with liquids, where we can do multiple prescriptions, we can also do prescription tillage, which sounds really freaky. The first time I heard about it, a lot of people get really jacked up about it. They really want to know a lot more about it. But imagine if you knew that you planted higher rates, you seeded a higher population of corn in certain areas of your field. Well, you by default you're going to have a lot more residue out there. There's going to be a lot more to size. There's going to be a lot more going on. Well, maybe you're hitting. You need to get down lower to break up some of those root balls. Maybe you've hit a hard pan, and that you're going across the field, and we're really dragging in these areas. We now have the ability to document from past operations. Our harvest layers, our spraying layers. We can take those layers and create prescriptions for our tillage. So we can control gang angle, we can control depth, we can control the pressure on the rolling basket or on the Pro Finish leveling system on the back. Those types of pieces are really, really, they're very specific. They're very specific to agronomic practices, very specific to the field operations, very specific to the fields themselves. And so what I think this does is kind of allows a tool to do even more, because you no longer have to kind of make this general decision of, well, I guess I'm just going to do everything like this. And then maybe if it's worth it, I'll get out of the cab and I'll reset it and I'll do this other patch again or change something up. You can literally either preset it in the cab. You can have presets in the cab based on certain cropping systems, certain crops, whatever kind of customized ideas you want to have in there. Presets where you can hit the button and just like changing the flow rate on your sprayer, you can now change how your tillage tool works out in the field. Loaded answer, I know, but that really is what TruSet, to me, what that brings to the table.
Yeah, you touched on a lot of the key features and how it can benefit you, especially agronomically. So you talked about different seeding rates, or even maybe you have a flat seeding rate, but there's an area of the field that yields higher than the other spots. So you got hilltops and kind of the honey hole, whatever it may be. We all know that with yield comes residue, and not all residue is created equal.
Yeah, amen.
You need to size it. You need to do more. You need to maybe you need to turn the soil a little bit more. Maybe you just need to size some residue, whatever it may be. With a tool like a 2660 VT, you can adjust that gang angle. You can adjust the depth. You can adjust your finishing attachment. With something like a 2730 ripper, you can lower your discs, your front discs. Mm-hmm. You can lower your ripper shanks. You can raise your ripper shanks. Whatever you need to do, You also talked about, Jake, the ability to have presets. So maybe it's a soybean preset and a corn preset, or sugar beets and soybeans, whatever it may be. Every crop is a little bit different, and every crop needs to be tilled a little bit different, or post-crop needs to be tilled a little bit different. We think about grain cart traffic in the grains field. So your headlands, parking semis on the headlands, running grain carts. Maybe we want to work that ground just a hair deeper to maybe take out some of that compaction, or maybe we don't. Maybe we want to work it a little bit shallower.
Yeah.
Whatever your preference may be, we have the ability to make those adjustments right in the cab. One of the things that I get from a lot of people is I have my 70-year-old retired neighbor running my tillage tool. I want it to be simple. And they say there's nothing more simple than a single point control on depth. And I ask them, or I bring up, I say, well, what could be more simple if all you do is you set up 4 presets and you say, hey, when you're in a cornfield, you use the corn preset. When you're in a soybean field, you use the soybean preset. When you're on the headlands, you use the headland preset, or whatever you want to name them, or whatever. Maybe it's different depths. Maybe you have a 3-inch preset, and you have a 7-inch preset, and you have a 4.5-inch preset, whatever it may be. What could be more simple than that? To be able to do that. Also, you brought up the rolling baskets, or the finishing attachment at the back of the tillage tool. Without TruSet, you have to get out and you have to adjust that constant down pressure on a needle valve right on the hitch of the tool.
Right.
We can adjust that right from the cab. One of the other cool things that we can do, and the conversation gets brought up a lot here in the Red River Valley, is what happens when it gets muddy? What can I do with those rolling baskets before they ball up with mud? Well, we can lift those up right from in the cab.
Yes,
we can take all the pressure off right from the cab. We can do whatever we want. The other thing that intrigued me about what you were talking about was you said prescription-based tillage. Maybe those weren't your exact words.
That sounds familiar.
But you talked about running prescriptions on tillage.
Yep.
Is that real?
Yeah, we've done it. Yeah, it works exactly. I mean, it's no different than hitting a button. You're literally just bringing a map in there and telling it, hey, when I'm getting into this area, you predefine it just like you would a rate controller. You say, instead of 10 gallons per acre, or instead of 150 pounds of product per acre, I want 450 pounds of down pressure on my rolling basket. You know, if you're going into a certain area that has a lot more, that has a change in the residue that's out there, maybe you want to change that gang angle. And you can do that based on past documentation. We can use a tool like the Agrian Prescription Builder and Operations Center and literally just say, hey, bring in my harvest map, and then we can create a 2660 VT, for example, type of prescription where we can literally adjust that gang angle based on where we're at for yield. Or we can make it'll take some making some assumptions in some cases, and it takes kind of getting to know your fields, and most of you know that. If you're just getting into documentation, the story that you know in your head doesn't always match what you're seeing on the screen, and so it's going to take getting to know that kind of stuff to know what areas you may want to fine-tune, but for the most part, it aligns very, very well. And so that's where having a tool like that and the ability to utilize the agronomic data layers from other operations, like as you mentioned, where the grain cart ran, or if you are running an air seeder. I mean, if you're running especially, say, a C850 cart, I mean, geez, those things are as big as a semi, and especially when they're loaded, when they're pulling 850 bushels of product, that's a very, very significant weight that's going to be rolling across the field at that certain point. And so, the ability to know if you're in areas where it's suitable and where you can work those pieces, if that is a part of your tillage practice, that's a really, really nice feature, a nice tool. And like I said, or like Tony said, rather, you can throw anybody, even me, in the cab, and I can make a field look really nice. That was one of the first things we ever did. It was the first thing we ever did at the land lab. And they literally, that was the only thing that I kid you not, that was the only thing that Tony and Caleb and the other guys were willing to walk away from and trust that I couldn't screw up, because they'd already, opened the field up. They'd already got all the, all the power poles, everything was worked around. They're like, yep, just go run straight lines back and forth and we'll be back in an hour. And they left me and Brandon, our intern for the summer, alone to go do tillage work. And, so yeah, it really, TruSet is really changing the way that that process really is adding some scientific, a little bit more in depth, adding a little bit more nuance and a little bit more presence to what we're doing, but at the same time, it's also making it a heck of a lot easier. So you kind of win both ways.
And so talking about keeping tillage simple, what is more simple than implementing a prescription and just saying go? Don't worry about the depth, just go. Let the prescription do its thing. I do feel that is very beneficial, very efficient, and very simple. Not having to get in and out of the cab. Now, that being said, single point depth control does come standard, or it comes with a TruSet machine. Mm-hmm. So TruSet is standard on the machines that it's capable of, but it does also come with single point depth control. So if you happen to hook up a tractor that's not compatible, whatever it may be. Speaking of tractors being compatible,
yes,
there are a number of different things that can be done to make your tractor compatible. Mm-hmm. There are a few tractors that John Deere considers TruSet ready, which would be your R series tractors, the 30 series tractors. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, you do need an additional display in those 30 series machines. But when we get down into the 20s, the 10s, the Ott series, even some competitive tractors. So maybe you're running an Agco Challenger, the new Fendt, the Fendt Varios, however you pronounce it. Those can be made TruSet compatible. Essentially what we're doing is we're mounting a John Deere SCV valve stack on the hitch of the tool, and then that is what's communicating to the display. So the case quad track SCV stack is essentially just feeding oil to the John Deere SCV stack, and then the John Deere SCV stack is what's controlling the tool. So it is out there. It is a compatibility kit that can be put on, as well as older John Deere machines. So this is not just new John Deere only. We can pretty much turn any tractor out there TruSet. We can get it to be TruSet compatible. We had already talked about some of the compatibility when it comes to the tools. The 2730s, the 2510Hs, 2430s, 2230s, numerous ones out there. Stop into your local RDO or your local John Deere dealership. They should be able to tell you more. There's also performance upgrade kits. We can add TruSet to some tools that were ordered without TruSet when TruSet first came out. Now I say that, and TruSet actually, I believe, was released in 2015 or 16 when the 2730 Ripper came out. It was released as a new product, so it has been around for a little while. There have been TruSet machines out there. Once they released it on the 2730, then it came on the 2230 and a couple of the newer machines. Got it on the new 2430 chisel plow, got it on the 2660 VT. Each tool, it controls a little bit different. Not every tool is the same. It all depends on what your configuration is.
Absolutely.
So There is some value to TruSet, not only the being able to make it easier to make adjustments, the in-cab adjustability, the in-cab functionality, but Jake, you also touched on, and we talked about in our last episode too, talked about documenting that pass.
Yeah. Documenting
your tillage. Maybe it's you want to know the tillage speed. Some of these new tools are more efficient. The 2230 is definitely designed for more speed. We can handle more speed. Or maybe it is kind of a 2730 scenario that you want it to be at slower speeds. You want to make sure you're getting nice soil turning and you're really incorporating that residue. So there's a lot of agronomic benefits that you had discussed, and there's a lot of features and functionality that make things easier.
You bet.
When it comes to running TruSet. So definitely a cool tool. Definitely a lot of benefits to running TruSet on your tillage. As much as you want to keep it simple and basic, like I said before, I don't know how much more simple you can get than using presets, using map-based prescriptions, things like that.
Yeah, and quite honestly, for a tool that it seems like we're adding more to it, and typically the more features, the more things you add to something more complicated it becomes, the ability for you to then take control of those adjustments, the side-to-side leveling, just basic features that we kind of take for granted that when we run TruSet equipment, we sometimes take for granted the fact that we have access, the ability to make these adjustments, because you'll look at the tool and it's like, well, that doesn't look quite right. Oh yeah, I can't hit the button in the cab. It's amazing how many of those subtle adjustments that we would literally just let ride because we didn't want to get back out, in the mud and try to adjust it properly, or we weren't going to be hitting a patch for too long. Now we're doing a better job with our passes. We're more consistent with our passes. And if we are doing something different, we're documenting it so we can see that impact. And I tell you, especially with tools like Field Analyzer Beta, where we're able to bring in our tillage pass and then overlay a harvest map or a yield map of some kind over the top. Now we can start to see some of those yield benefits for those differences if we do want to do a pressure trial or a depth trial, or maybe you want to dabble in no-till for a season or two and see what kind of agronomic impact that has. Just the ability to document those passes for more than just a generic, yep, I covered this, which you can do too. Just the ability to do that and to do that via JD Link Connect. And transferring that data straight into Operations Center. It's you don't even realize the value that it has until you have it. And in any time you probably would say, no, I could probably do without. I don't need all that fancy stuff. But I tell you, it's definitely, if you've never demoed it before, you never tried it before, it's certainly worth the conversation. It's certainly worth the demo. It's a fun demo.
Absolutely. And the last thing I want to touch on that not a lot of people know about, even if they do know TruSet, did you know that with TruSet, you can take advantage of features like section control? So if you happen to till or dig your headlands first, section control will actually raise and lower the tool as you turn around. How cool is that?
Well,
I mean,
yeah.
you can.
That's cool.
You don't even have to raise and lower the tillage tool anymore because it will do it on its own. So, section control, that's another value-added benefit to TruSet and how this tool can increase efficiency. It can decrease operator fatigue, not having to do a lot of those things. So a very cool feature. If you have any questions about TruSet, you're curious, Jake talked about demoing a tool with TruSet, please stop into your local RDO equipment dealership or your local John Deere dealership that you work with in your area. Talk to them about TruSet. They will be able to get you the information you are looking for.
Yeah, and for you no-till guys, talk to them about the 2660 VT with TruSet. And I'm just saying, for those of you who are no-till guys that stuck it out to the bitter end, there's your nugget of information. Go talk to them about residue management using a 2660 VT.
There you go. That last little nugget of information. So with that, thank you again for tuning in to another episode. Thanks again, Jake, for being here. And
thank you all for listening, for keeping me on, not telling Tony to get rid of me so quick.
There we go. All right, everyone. We will catch you on the next one. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode. If you have questions about the technology and products discussed, or have ideas about future episodes, please leave them in the comments below. You can also subscribe to RDO's YouTube channel and be in the know about each episode, or tune in on any streaming service. Thanks for listening.